Joining us is Howie Klein. He's the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC, which raises money for progressive and socialist candidates all around America. He also writes Down with Tyranny. Howie, last week the Democratic caucus nominated Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker. The vote now goes before the full House on January 3rd. The caucus also named Congressman Steny Hoyer as House Majority Leader, and Howie Klein congratulated Congressman Hoyer in Down with Tyranny by writing these words, and I quote, Should Steny Hoyer be spending the rest of his life rotting in a prison cell? Absolutely. I take it you're not a fan of Steny Hoyer.
Nor have I ever been.
I know.
So Steny was the, he's basically number two after Pelosi.
Right.
So, right now he's the, so whatever she is, he's the one below her. So when she goes up to be Speaker, he'll be the Majority Leader. She's
Right.
Majority Leader.
I think he's the whip now.
Yeah, he's the whip.
So
Clyburn steps up to be whip, and Hoyer steps up to be Majority Leader.
right.
And I think that if I recall, the story that I wrote a couple of stories that involved Steny Hoyer. So I think that the one you're relating to has to do with the cost of medicine. Is that correct?
Yes.
Pharmaceuticals?
Yes.
Yeah. Because there are only 4 people in the history of the House who have taken over $1 million in bribes from the pharmaceutical industry, and he just crossed that mark. So and in fact, the outgoing Majority Leader, who will now be Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, he's just at around the same place in terms of the number and the amount of bribes that he's taken from those big companies. He's just a little bit more than Steny Hoyer. They're both over $1 million, though. So the reason that I brought that up, well, there were a few things. One strictly had to do with why Americans pay so much more money than people all around the world for medicine. And the other has to do with something that came up that has the people in the House having their heads explode right now, which was Alexandria Ocasio saying that there should be a rule that if you're on a committee that's dealing with some industry, you shouldn't be taking any money from that industry. Mm-hmm. And of course, people want to be on committees so they can get that money. So, it's a bipartisan thing. There's corruption on both sides. And, everyone is talking about H.R. 1, the first bill that Pelosi is bringing up in January, which is an anti-corruption bill. But it seems to me that the biggest source of corruption in Congress is the fact that people are taking bribes from the industries that they're supposed to be overseeing. And that's not in the bill. There's nothing, no mention of it in the bill. Now, of course, I understand where Pelosi is coming from. If it was in the bill wouldn't pass. But if you want to talk about getting rid of corruption and you want to talk about, reforming Congress, there's no better way to do it than to say to members, you are now no longer allowed to take money. If you're on a committee that's dealing with an industry, you're not allowed to take money from that industry. And I think everyone would like that. Don't you?
Yeah. Explain to me how the money works, because if you're taking $1 million from the pharmaceutical industry, it's not going into your pocket. If you're Steny Hoyer,
it does go into it can go into your pocket. So let's just there's a few ways to look at this thing. There used to always be said, well, it doesn't go into your pocket, just like you just said. However, say you retire, say you get defeated, and say you've got $1 million left in your because it really goes to your campaign,
your war chest.
But it goes to your campaign war chest. However, say you decide to retire and the $1 million are still in there. Guess where the money goes?
We should call Mel Brooks because it's the producers.
You can do anything you want with that money,
right.
More or less. You can't. You have to be careful what you do. But for example, you can hire your son or your nephew or your wife or your sister to make sure the money is well taken care of and pay it to her.
So if you're a congressman, you have a war chest and you build up money. Now, Steny Hoyer.
Now, what Hoyer does with that money is he uses it to buy power.
Right.
So we've talked about this before on the show. where there are a number of, let's put it like this, there are a number of Democrats that don't want to be seen taking money from the private prison industry, from payday lenders, from Wall Street, from the pharmaceutical companies. They don't want their constituents to see that they're taking this dirty money. So what do? They take it from Hoyer instead. So Hoyer acts as a laundromat for this dirty money.
Wow.
So and in return for him doing that, he gets the loyalty of those members, and they vote for him to be majority leader, which makes it more possible for him to get even more money. It's a dirty little vicious cycle, and Hoyer is one of the worst at it of everybody. He's literally one of the worst among the Democrats. I mean, obviously the Republicans are terrible as well, but Hoyer's real bad. But Debbie Wasserman Schultz has made a name for herself doing the same thing.
So the people who have the least moral qualms get the most money, and then they accrue the most power because they can, as you just said, launder this dirty money.
Bingo.
Yeah. Well, is it corrupt?
It defines corruption, yes.
How is it corrupt? Because there is the part about paying enormous salaries to your children and your wife if you lose the next election.
Or if you decide to retire, which eventually everybody does.
Right. But if you're spreading the money around like manure, how is that corrupt?
Well, you're buying power in return for spread. You're not just giving it to people because you like the way they smile. You're giving it to people so that they will vote for you, and so you can accrue power. That's the reason why Steny Hoyer does that.
Yeah, I think one of the problems the people who want to overturn Citizens United have is they're not framing it properly. It's not bribery. It's not how we classically see a bribe or feathering one's nest.
It's bribery, though. I mean, it's more than bribery, but it's very much bribery. I mean, that was the point of my article today, by the way, which is that the reason that we're paying so much more money for medicine is because the people who are writing the laws are getting paid off by the companies. In other words, Amgen is giving these people who are writing the laws literally millions of dollars, and therefore the laws get written the way Amgen wants them to get written. I mean, there is not going to. If Congress wanted to, and if Trump, who promised he would do it, wanted to, the price of pharmaceutical drugs could be cut in half tomorrow. Now, that's usually what people talk about, half. The reality is, as you know, as I've said before, I go to places like usually Thailand, but also Turkey, and buy medicine there. Because of conditions that I have to get very, very expensive medicines, and it's not half. In some cases, it's not even close. It's like a tenth. I mean, it's a very simple thing. We don't have to get into some of the more complicated ones, but a very simple thing is an inhaler that you take. It's a very common thing, and in the United States, it costs $80 in the United States. I think I've got it right. $80 in the United States and $6 in Thailand. So when you're saying that it costs half, that's the drug companies should be happy if all we do is get half. And in fact, that I know we're going to talk about Bernie Palooza next, but at Bernie Palooza there was a lot of talk about drug prices, and everyone who spoke kept speaking about half or 40%, and I wanted to jump up and start yelling, no, it's not 40%, it's a tenth, it's 10%. But they have their studies, and that's how they're working this thing. But the case that I'm trying to make, though, is that the reason that it's bribery is because the drug companies are giving these politicians millions of dollars.
Okay.
And in return for that, they get to write the laws. They get to not be put upon to do things they don't want to do, like cut their prices, for example. They will say to the Republicans and to these corrupt Democrats, we don't want imported drugs coming into this country from Canada, and then they'll write laws to make sure that imported drugs are not allowed into Canada from Canada coming into the United States, and that's reimportation. So it's how could it be anything but bribery?
Okay, how does this work then? When you think of Tip O'Neill, John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Cantor, these are the people who are in the top echelons in Congress. Or were.
Some were, some, Nancy still is.
Do any of these people rise to the top without having money to spread around?
No.
Really? In other words, the only way you can become speaker is if you take money and then pass it around, and that gives you the power.
Yes. Now, Nancy usually is not on the top of anyone's list of dirty industries. She manages to get money from other sources, but she gets humongous amounts of money. But no one is going to accuse her of taking money from Wall Street, taking money from big pharma. She has other sources to get this money, and I think with her it has more to do with ideology of people who actually are looking for someone to promote progressive values. I hate to be an apologist for her, and I'm not meaning to be, but I think that's the reality of it. Whereas with some of the others, it is strictly based on quid pro quo from specific industries. Let me say something since we're talking about this, is that what's the alternative to this? Imagine if we had a system where we elected someone to be speaker and we elected someone to be majority leader because of their ideas and because they have good proposals, or because we elect her because she's very, very beautiful. I mean, there are different ways to do this, but now it's only done this other way. It's not based on how someone looks. It's not based on their personality. It's not based on the content of their ideas. It's instead based on money. That's the way it is. The ones who get elected are the ones that give money out, spread it around like manure, as you said. That is it. That's our situation. And when Nancy Pelosi talks about H.R. 1 and reforming Congress, she's not really getting to the heart of the matter. I mean, she's trying to make some headway and she's being realistic about what she can accomplish. But the real way to reform Congress and to make it less corrupt is to get all of this campaign money out of the system. That is the only way it's going to ever happen. It is the root of every single problem we have in this country.
Okay, so Steny, I keep hearing that, and I know it's true. I just don't understand it completely and how it.
I don't understand why you don't understand it. You're a smart guy. It's not that hard.
Because I don't think somebody like Clyburn is going off and living happily ever after in a mansion. But like you said, he's buying power, and power is more satisfying for some people than money.
Okay, and you brought up Clyburn. He is one of the most corrupt members of the Democrats, of all the Democrats in the House.
And he is currently the whip, I believe. No, he's going to be the whip. Steny Hoyer is the whip. Right. So when you're the whip, you're wrangling votes. Are you allowed to talk about campaign contributions when you're rounding up votes? Is that legal?
Legal? I think it's legal. I don't think it's ethical, and I don't think it's done openly. I mean, you know that great video on YouTube of John Boehner being caught handing out checks on the floor of the House. Handing out checks. This is before he was Speaker, but he was in the House leadership, and he was handing out tobacco industry checks. They were giving him the checks to hand out to members. And he was doing it, and he got caught. And when he got caught and he was on TV, he got caught on TV, he said, "This must stop." Literally, everyone should look that up. If you haven't seen this video, it is an incredible video of John Boehner handing out bribes from the tobacco industry on the floor of the House. And then when he got interviewed, I think it was on 60 Minutes. If it wasn't 60 Minutes, it was a show like 60 Minutes. And they confronted him with it, and he got all indignant and started yelling, "This must stop."
Maybe he was talking about videotaping the House of Representatives. Okay.
No, he was talking about handing out bribery checks on the floor of the House.
If you're a new congressman and you're a multimillionaire and you just start handing out checks, Can you move up the leadership that way?
Absolutely.
Wow. All right. The New Dems. Who are the New Dems and the Blue Dogs? And are we finding that this new crop of Democratic Congress people, I guess they're going to be about 40, right? It's a big number of new Congress.
No, it's way more than 40. What the number 40 is the net number of seats the Democrats flipped. So there are a lot more freshmen than 40 because there were, for example, John Conyers, who is a longtime Democratic congressman from Detroit, is no longer going to be in Congress, and instead we have Rashida Tlaib. So she's a freshman, but she didn't flip a seat. She just won a. And there are a lot like Alexandria Ocasio. Again, same story. She had a seat that was formerly held by a Democrat who's gone, and so there are a lot more freshmen than just the 40 that flip seats.
And what are we discovering? Are they being true to their campaign promises, or are they being seduced by money and joining the more Republican-type Democratic caucuses?
Well, so far, 25 joined the Progressive Caucus. So there are 25 who joined the Progressives.
We like the Progressive Caucus.
Yeah, they're homeless.
Okay.
Then the 7 joined the Blue Dogs, and 30 joined the New Dems. So the New Dems and the Blue Dogs make up the Republican wing of the Democratic Party.
Were there any surprises when it comes to the New Dems? Did anybody join the New Democratic Coalition who you didn't think?
Surprises for me? There were no surprises for me, but I think a lot of people in their districts are shocked. Thinking that they were electing, some progressive who believed in the same things that they believed in, and people who donated to them and people who really had high hopes for them. I think some of them are shocked to find these people have joined the New Dems. Remember, a couple of years ago, people didn't even know what the New Dems were, and now they're finding out what a terrible organization the New Dems are, and they're learning that, and then they're seeing that their new member has went and joined them.
Adam Schiff, for example, is a New Dem.
He's a New Dem. He used to be a Blue Dog. He's a New Dem now, and but he's not a new member. But Adam Schiff, people think Adam Schiff is great because he's so anti-Trump, and he says all these wonderful things against Trump. But if you look at Adam Schiff's record, when he was in the state legislature, he was conservative. And then when he got to Congress, he's conservative. Now, when I say he's a conservative, I don't mean he's as conservative as a Republican, but for a Democrat, he's conservative. I mean, how do you look at how that works? One is, it used to be that they would vote, they voted against, some of them voted against Obamacare. Most of them oppose Medicare for all. Most of them, always want to slow things down and not move on a progressive agenda. And that's why we call them the Republican wing of the Democratic Party.
Or is it fair to call it the Clinton wing? Is that a more?
Well, yes, you could say that.
Okay, and maybe even the Obama wing, right? Unfortunately.
Well, the Obama wing would have supported Obamacare. Remember, these people, what they did. See, what the difference is a Republican can't get into the Democratic caucus and demand that they take out a public option, or but yet there were lots and lots of Democrats, dozens of Democrats from the New Dems and the Blue Dogs, who said, "I will not support Obamacare with a public option. Take it out, or I'm out." A Republican can't do that, but Democrats do that. That's what's so bad about when they do things like join the New Dems and the Blue Dogs. Then they all reinforce each other's worst tendencies, and they tend to do this stuff.
Let me ask you a stupid question. Blue Dog is a caucus, right?
That's right. In other words, it's a real thing. It's not an adjective. What it is it's an organization of a sort. They elect officers, they pay dues, They have lunch together. They work together. They sponsor each other's bills. It's a for real thing, and the New Dems as well. Now, virtually every Blue Dog, except one or two, is also a New Dem.
That was what I was going to ask you. That okay, I see.
Yeah.
So you can,
but
be
it doesn't
both.
work the other way. Not every New Dem is a Blue Dog, but virtually every Blue Dog is a New Dem.
I see. Okay.
See, the Blue Dogs they were like the segregationists in the South. That's how it got started. So they hate gays. They're misogynistic. They're anti-choice. So they're really off the deep end of being right wing. Now they're no longer that. They're no longer as much that. There's a little tinge of that left, but not much. Now they really are. I don't know what the damn difference is anymore between them and the Blue Dogs. Now it's just a matter of how, the Blue Dogs and the New Dems. It's just really a matter of corruption and getting money from Wall Street and doing Wall Street's bidding. You know, one of the worst things about the Blue Dogs and the New Dems is they worked hand in glove with the Republicans to get rid of Dodd-Frank, to make it possible for the big banks to start the same process that led to the last big recession. And, you know, that's where the problem comes in. And I've spoken to some of these freshmen who have joined. I've spoken to a lot of them and tried to talk them out of it. And I didn't fail 100%. Some of them didn't do it. But mostly I failed. And they, you know, just went forward. And what they say to me is that they're not going to be that way. And then I say to them, that's what everybody says. I've been doing this for years, and everybody says I'm not going to be like them. And maybe they don't for the first 6 months. Maybe they even hold out for a year, but no one holds out for more than a year, and you're not going to either. And they say, you don't know me as well as I do. Screw you.
Yeah. Is there pressure from their constituents to be Blue Dog?
Never, 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 never. There's pressure from money. That's what it is. Again, we get back to the money. These people, you know, they say, how am I going to raise any money for my next campaign? The DCCC demands that they spend, you know, most of their time making calls, and, you know, literally. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating here. They want them to be sitting and making calls from DCCC headquarters asking for money, and they want them doing that every single day. And, you know, people, you know, freaked out about it. But if you join the Blue Dogs or the New Dems, you get these big checks, these big corporate PAC checks, or money from Hoyer, for example. And you know, it takes one of those checks, I'll say a $10,000 corporate PAC check. You know how many calls you have to make to people who are going to give you $20 or $30 or $50 or even $100? You have to make a lot of calls for just to make up for one of those checks. So that's why they do it, and it has nothing to do with their constituents. No constituents have ever told anybody to go join the Blue Dogs. We're trying to make it so that it's the opposite of that, so that when constituents see that their member is a Blue Dog or a New Dem, they turn on them. It worked to some extent with Schiff, as a matter of fact. You know, he didn't like it that I was, you know, publicizing it widely that he was a Blue Dog, and he asked one of his staffers to call me and to say that he'd leave the Blue Dogs if I promised to stop attacking him.
Did he leave?
I said no, and he left anyway because his district changed so drastically that he knew he could be in trouble. He went from the kind of a somewhat liberal district, you know, Democratic district, but somewhat liberal, to one of the fiercest red districts in the whole country. I mean, blue district, sorry. When I was thinking red, I was thinking of communist. But, you know, he now represents a very, very, very left-wing district where he didn't before. And he knew that being a Blue Dog could really hurt him. So he feels it's safe for him to be a New Dem, and I'm doing the best I can to educate the people in this district so that they start to understand what a Blue Dog is and what a New Dem is. I mean, they understand already what a Blue Dog, but it took decades for people to start understanding what a Blue Dog is, and we're starting all over again with the New Dems now.
Right. You're talking about Silver Lake, Hollywood, West Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's who Adam Schiff represents.
And he still represents, some less left areas like in Burbank and in Glendale, but he used to have much bigger parts of Pasadena, which were a little bit more conservative and a little bit less liberal, and at that time they were. Now they're less that way. So he gave up those, or it wasn't up to him, but those areas were taken out of his district, and instead he wound up with Silver Lake, Los Feliz, Hollywood, West Hollywood, and you can't possibly run as a blue dog in those areas. It's impossible.
Tell me about Bernie Palooza. You were in Vermont. What was going on?
So Bernie's wife put on. Bernie's wife is the chair or president, I don't know what she calls it, of the Sanders Institute. That's what it's called, the Sanders Institute. And she had a convocation, and that's one way to look at it. I mean, that's what it was. But on the other hand, you could also look at it as all of the Bernie Sanders advisors and fans and getting together, which is another way to look which also it was, I should say. Mm-hmm. And so it was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday meetings and forums. It was very, very interesting. People from all over the country got there and shared ideas, shared passion, and talked about ideas that related to both the kinds of things that progressives are going to be running on, and also the ways that progressives will govern when they get a chance, and also the possibility of Bernie running for president in 2020. Those were all in the back of everyone's mind all through the 3-day convention.
I would assume primarily you were talking about Medicare for all,
that was a big climate change. Gigantic.
Climate change is gigantic.
Yeah, I mean, it was gigantic at those meetings. It was talked about very, very frequently and often, and there were lots of panels about that. It was a really big topic.
Does anybody have any ideas on how to suck the carbon dioxide out of the air? I'm reading that they think we may be able to still use fossil fuel, and they're going to invent these new technologies that are going to slurp it all out and put it into outer space. Did they talk about that?
No, maybe someone talked about it, and I wasn't at every meeting. Sometimes some of those meetings got a little bit boring, and I would run for my life. So maybe they did, but if they did, no one mentioned it to me, and that's interesting to me.
And geoengineering, where you get these clouds and you change the color of the clouds so that it reflects the light upward and out of the atmosphere. This way we can keep fracking and use our fossil fuels.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Nobody talked about that.
If they did, I was not aware of it. Okay. I tended to go to those panels about that because I'm interested in the subject, but I didn't think anyone mentioned that. But they may have mentioned it when I wasn't listening or when I was talking with someone. I had a wonderful little experience during one of these things. This woman came over to me and introduced herself, and it's someone who I've never met in person, or at least I thought I had never met her in person. And she's in her 40s now. And she's someone who I admire a lot. She's an activist who does really good work, and I see her name all the time, and she's on several email groups that I'm in, and I always think she's great. And she walked over to me and introduced herself, and she said, and I said, "Oh, I've always wanted to meet you." And she said, "Well, you did meet me." I said, "Oh, I forgot." And she said, "Well, you didn't know at the time." I said, "Oh, okay." She said, "When I was 17, so think about that. She's 34 now. She was 17 then." She said, "We were at Madison Square Garden, and Morrissey was singing, and she rushed the stage and tried to jump up on the stage to kiss Morrissey. And as she was being dragged out of Madison Square Garden by 3 policemen, I came up to her and gave her a backstage pass." And she said she's always loved me for that and always wanted to say something to me, but had never had a chance. And she had a chance, and she did, and she made me feel really good. Because to be honest with you, most of the people who have a Morrissey story that relates to me, it's the opposite. Because Morrissey used to tell me like if someone was annoying him, he would, we had little hand signals that he would throw saying, get this person away from me as quickly as possible. And then I had to be the heavy and go up to someone whose whole life has been, just leading up to this moment where he or she was going to get to hug Morrissey, and I would have to go up to them and say, you have to leave now. So people hate me for that. And here the opposite happened with this girl who I really admire. She's a woman now, but she was a girl then.
Were you working with the Smiths or Morrissey?
Both.
Wow.
Yeah, both Smiths and Morrissey were on Sire and then Reprise.
Wow.
So they were in my review.
Wow. Apparently you never discussed politics with Morrissey.
No, we did. What do you mean?
Well, isn't he right-wing? Isn't he a Trump supporter?
Well, no. He's just a troublemaker. He just wants to, carry on and says anything that comes out of his, passes through his brain. Morrissey is just like a normal. You know what? The last thing I want is to start fighting with your listeners about Morrissey.
Okay.
But the Morrissey that I know is a really good member of labor. He's not a conservative with a big C. He hated what's her name?
Thatcher.
Thatcher, right? He hated Thatcher. So he's just a normal guy. But on the other hand, he says things to be outrageous sometimes.
Don't listen to what he says. Listen to what he sings.
Exactly. He has offended a lot of people with some of these crazy remarks about Trump. But imagine now if he hadn't said them, you and I wouldn't be discussing it right now, which we are. So he's on the air, and people might want to check him out and maybe buy one of his CDs.
He's doing Back on the Chain Gang. He's doing Chrissie Hynde. He's covering that. You don't know Chrissie Hynde, do you?
She was on my label as well. Yes, I know her very well.
Wow.
You're joking, though, right?
I know, but I have such a massive crush on Chrissie Hynde. I do.
Chrissie's awesome.
Yeah, I think she could crush me, my spirit and my soul. I don't think she suffers fools.
I'd say that you're correct there.
Yeah. Howie Klein. It is an honor and a privilege to talk to Howie Klein. He is the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC, which raises money for progressive candidates. Read them every day over at Down with Tyranny. We'll talk to you next week, sir.
Next week, we will talk about the one member of Congress, aside from Bernie, who I sat down and talked with at Bernie Palooza, and we haven't had time to mention. I hadn't had time to mention it until now, but we'll just leave it as a tease, and because that person is Tulsi Gabbard.
That sounds great.
All right.
Thank you, sir.